Hello and welcome to another episode of Insomnia TV. Tonight we continue our look at the unsolved mystery mega iceberg. We will pick up where we left off, which was about a third of the way through layer 1. As I mentioned before, this iceberg is huge and will take some time to get through. If you didn't see part 1, basically I go over and give a brief summary of each mystery, some more brief than others, with a few theories on each. Some of the more deep philosophical or scientific mysteries I just kind of gloss over, since those are just too much to be discussed in this format. Before we dive into part 2 of layer 1, I just want to remind you, if you enjoyed this content, please give me a like and a subscribe. I appreciate every bit of the support I've had so far, so let's jump in. Everywhere at the End of Time's final 5-minute sample. This one is a lost media mystery. Leland Kirby is an English ambient musician who went under the name The Caretaker for several albums. From 2016 until 2019, Kirby would release a series of albums called Everywhere at the End of Time. They were broken into 6 separate stages, or albums. The albums received critical acclaim, particularly albums 3 and 6. The albums used degrading loops of sampled ballroom music meant to portray the progression of Alzheimer's disease. It became an internet phenomenon in the early 2020s, emerging in TikTok videos as a listening challenge, while also becoming a mod in a video game and appearing in several memes. The mystery lies within the last 5 minutes of stage 6. The sample played has never been identified, and Kirby himself does not remember the name of the song. The only info regarding this sample are the following. The record sample was released in the 60s. 50 copies were given out to the choir members who helped record the take. The album was a private recording, and Kirby himself was able to snag 2 copies in the 90s, although he doesn't remember how or where. As of today, the lost media community is still searching and are said to be close to identifying the unknown sample. Fairy circles, aka arid grass formations. Fairy circles are circular patches of land barren of plants, varying between 7 and 49 feet in diameter, often encircled by a ring of stimulated growth. The circles are fairly common in western parts of South Africa, but have also been found in Australia and even Idaho. The circles were first noted in the 1920s. The circles have a life cycle of around 24 to 75 years, with an average lifespan of around 41 years, at which point they mature and die after being overtaken by other grasses. The majority of circles more or less appear in their final size, although a few do grow over time, but it's usually within a 4-year window. Fairy circles have stumped researchers for a long time. Starting in the early 2000s, many theories would be put forward. Some would be met with controversy. One of the more favored theories is that the vegetation pattern are a result of competition for scarce water, as the plants somehow organize themselves to maximize the scarce resources. The barren patches capture water which then flows to the outer edges of the ring. Another favored theory is the sand termite, which was found at 80 to 100% of the older circles, and in 100% of new circles. The theory was that the barren circle allowed water to percolate down through the sandy soil and accumulate underground, which allowed the soil to remain moist under the driest of conditions. Grass grown around the circle would then accumulate soil water, and in turn would be fed on by the termites, slowly increasing the size of the circle. In essence, the termites are cultivating their own constant source of water and food. Other theories include geological faults, seed harvesting ants, rodents, toxic substances in the soil, meteorites, radioactivity, and the more paranormal theories such as UFOs, dragon's breath, ghosts of dead natives, and fairies. The local indigenous Himba people have claimed it comes from the gods as well. Fermi Paradox. The Fermi Paradox seeks to answer the question of where aliens are. The paradox takes its name from physicist Enrico Fermi, who supposedly stated in a casual conversation that interstellar travel would be achieved given enough time, meaning if others existed in the universe, they would have visited Earth already. This was further expanded upon by Frank Tipler, a professor of physics at Tulane University, who suggested that interstellar travel could be achieved by having some kind of self-replicating artificial intelligence move from star system to star system, creating copies of itself as it traveled. And since no evidence of such advanced machinery has ever been found on Earth, it's most likely that no other intelligence is out there. In Fermi's time, they assumed there were more suitable planets for life, yet they saw no evidence of it. But now, current models show many suitable planets for life. But yet, no life has been detected, further adding proof to the Fermi Paradox. However, there are several theories as to why aliens might not have visited. There are way too many to list here, so I'll go over a few of the more popular ones. The most obvious one states that aliens may not have come here just because of the sheer difficulty that makes space travel impractical. There's also the possibility that maybe aliens just chose never to visit us. And how can I do this topic without bringing up the ancient alien theory, which states that aliens have visited in the past? There's also the well-known civilizations destroy themselves before they are able to interstellar travel hypothesis. But there's no way to prove the Fermi Paradox, as there is no way to see every planet in the universe. And unless aliens land, it's impossible to disprove this as well. Fifth force. And we come across another physics mystery that is just way too deep to go into in this series, but we'll take a brief look. In physics, there are 4 observed fundamental forces that form the basis of all interactions in nature. Those are gravitational, electromagnetic, strong nuclear, and weak nuclear. A supposed 5th force is speculated to exist. However, it's not been proven yet. The search for a 5th force has increased in the past couple of decades due to 2 discoveries which have not been explained by the current 4 forces. And those 2 we discussed in the previous video: dark matter and dark energy. Some physicists speculate that a form of dark energy could be the 5th force. Others believe that it could be related to dark matter. If it is ever proven to exist, it will be considered a scientific breakthrough. First Wikipedia edit. Everyone knows about Wikipedia. It was formed on January 15, 2001, and went on to become the largest existing online reference and encyclopedia, and it's famous for allowing anyone to edit it. However, one mystery about Wiki is, who made the first edit? The debate breaks down into 2 camps. One story states that the earliest edit was on Wiki's founding day when an anonymous editor created the homepage with the text, quote, "This is the new Wikipedia," end quote. However, co-founder Jimmy Wales disputes this and claims he made the first edit on Wiki, utilizing the, quote, "Hello world," end quote, text. Prior to 2019, it was believed the oldest surviving edit on Wiki was actually made one day later, on January 16, 2001. But in 2019, it would be discovered when looking over an import of user mod Wiki revisions. An edit was made on the day of Wiki's launch. The homepage created with the text, "This is the new Wikipedia," and on August 13, 2019, users would show Jimmy Wales the discovered oldest post on Wiki. He responded that there were earlier edits, when he revealed that he had deleted several early Wikipedia edits. Then he stated the first official edit was his own Hello World. And in December 2021, the claim would gain traction when Wales announced that he was selling an NFT that recreated the edit. It would be sold almost 2 weeks later for $750,000. The Hello World edit is permanently lost though, because it was wiped from the server, leaving no trace. This would, however, challenge the legitimacy of the claim made by Wales. Joseph Regal, a professor and prominent Wiki contributor, requested a source for the Hello World claim, stating that based on the Starling archive, the "This is the new Wikipedia" quote was indeed the first post, published at 7:27:13 p.m. Regal would note that the website in December 2010 archived the first 10,000 posts, which again showed "This is the new Wikipedia" was the first edit. Another influential Wikipedian would also dispute Wales' claim. David Lindsay would respond and claim that Jimmy Wales' first Hello World edit was actually on Nupedia, the predecessor to Wikipedia, thus meaning the Wales edit was not truly a wiki edit. Starling would also note a test wiki was created and deleted almost a week before the real wiki would be made public, and that Wales most likely posted his Hello World post there. Frank Shaw's Gargoyle. On a windy evening in 1986, Frank Shaw, a NASA employee at Houston's Johnson Space Center, would end up running late on his way home from work. His wife and daughter were, however, not worried, as it was not odd for Frank to have to work long hours. Yet tonight, things would be different. Frank would come into his home clearly shaken up and very afraid. His daughter and wife would try to comfort Frank as best as they could. He would eventually compose himself enough to tell them what had him so scared. Frank would go on to tell them at the end of his shift, he would make his way to his vehicle to leave, when he happened to glance up and see a ghastly black gargoyle-like figure perched ominously on the edge of one of the Space Center buildings. Frank froze in horror as the jet-black humanoid with what seemed like a large cape draped across its shoulders stared at Frank. Frank would claim that the creature had two massive bat-like wings sticking out of both sides of the fabric. Or maybe not fabric, possibly wrinkled flesh of what he perceived was the cape, with wings, horns, claws, and sharp teeth as well. Frank would report an ominous feeling that he felt coming from the creature, almost as if it took delight that it struck terror into him. It was at this point that the creature unfurled its wings, which made a cracking noise, as it took flight into the powerful gusts blowing that night. Frank would sprint to his car and fumble with his keys for what seemed like forever, unlocked the door, dove in, and started the car and floored it to get out of there, too terrified to even look back. Despite the crazy tale, Shaw's family stood behind him, not out of blind support either. They truly believed him. Frank's family advised him not to tell his superiors though, for he risked losing his credibility, or possibly even having his sanity questioned. However, Frank could not get the night out of his head, and he was truly haunted by what had happened. He would eventually tell his supervisor, but to Frank's surprise, he was not met with skepticism. Instead, Frank's boss would reveal that Frank was not the first employee to have reported seeing this creature. Furthermore, a secret file had been opened on the cryptid months prior, when 2 German shepherds had been mauled and killed by something in the same area that Frank had seen the creature. So what did Frank Shaw see that night? The description matches closely to the supposed Mothman. However, Mothman seems to be more of an East Coast thing. Could this be a related cryptid? Or did Frank see a piece of secret military hardware being tested? Or was it just an overworked and tired Frank hallucinating? Free will. Another mystery that is just too deep to be discussed in this format. Not to mention that this is one of the longest running debates in the history of philosophy and religion, discussed by some of the smartest people to ever live. I could simply not do it justice. So I'll just say the basic argument is this. Do we choose between different possible courses of actions unimpeded by a God, or fate, or something beyond, which has done predetermined everything we do? Depending on what you believe opens a host of other debated concepts, such as moral responsibility, culpability, sin, etc. If we do have free will, then that means each individual deserves credit or blame for each action they do. If we don't have free will, then we are just making actions based on a predetermined plan, which opens up more philosophical debates. Whichever you believe, there's no way to ever prove one way or the other. Ghost camels in the American Southwest. So this is one of the most interesting cryptid stories I've read, because so much of it is documented to have really happened. In 1848, Quartermaster Major Henry Wayne would go to the War Department with a peculiar suggestion. He wanted the Secretary of War to consider importing camels to the Southwest Territory, which was greatly expanding. Now this isn't the first time that this was proposed. As far back as 1836, Major George G. Crossman would also recommend to Congress that the Army should use camels for the problems of crossing the desert. It was thought the camels could be used to carry at least twice the amount of weight as horses and mules. It was also suggested that the camels could carry mail, and that fast camel passenger trains could be developed to run from the Missouri River to the Pacific coast. And by 1854, the Senate passed a bill to appropriate $30,000 for the camel experiment. However, though the camels were well suited for travel in the Southwest, they were terribly unpopular with the soldiers. The camels had a habit of frightening smaller livestock. They were giant, goofy, and smelly. They also had a tendency to wander off during the nights. The Army would use the camels until the Civil War broke out 3 years later. And here's where the story kinda deviates. Some camels were supposedly released during a battle as a distraction. Others would be sold, while others were just straight up released into the desert. Whatever the case, the Army was done with the camel experiment. Though the camel corps was abandoned, they would still roam for decades, but they were not limited to this area, as sightings stretched from Iowa to California, even as far as north as British Columbia. In 1941, in Douglas, Texas, the last official sighting would occur, when the entire body of a camel was witnessed at relatively close range. The sightings were still sporadic in the 60s and would occur all the way up to the early 2000s, particularly in the 80s when a series of highly credible sightings took place in Arizona, New Mexico, California, and Texas. Sightings are generally made by witnesses who are traveling down roads that run through desert areas, when they happen to catch a glimpse of what appears to be a camel calmly strolling off into the distance. Other times they come from those exploring the desert on foot. There's also reports that have been made about those who spent the day hiking, treasure hunting, or exploring areas around one of the many abandoned mines in the American Southwest. And now for the mystery. It's been decades since the last real Army camel died. So what to make about these stories of people still seeing camels in the southwestern American desert? What are people really seeing? Are these really ghosts? Or could they be camels that somehow survived and reproduced and are still traversing the desert? Maybe it's a mirage. Or could it just be people who are telling tales to keep the legend alive? Ghosts. Everyone knows what a ghost is. The supposed soul or spirit of some dead person, or sometimes animal, that can appear to the living. Ghosts can take on many different forms and have been reported since ancient times. They are believed to haunt particular locations, objects, or people that they were associated with in their life. And 18% of Americans have claimed to have encountered a ghost or spirit in their lifetime. However, the overwhelming majority of the scientific community conclude there is zero proof that ghosts exist. Despite tons of investigation over centuries of time, no one has produced tangible proof. Ghost believers, however, point to the video evidence produced by ghost hunters and others. But that in itself has been called pseudoscience, so this is a mystery that almost certainly will never be solved. Girl from the Maine. On July 31st, 2001, around 2:50 p.m., hikers would find the body of a teenage girl in the Maine River in Frankfurt, Germany. The girl was estimated to be 15 to 16 years old but looked younger due to malnourishment. She was found wrapped in a leopard print sheet and tied with one white rope and one purple rope to the foot of an umbrella stand to weigh her down. The umbrella stand, however, was too light to keep the body submerged, and it surfaced after being dumped in the river before it found its way to the shore. She had been in the water for 12 to 24 hours and estimated to have died up to 3 days prior. The ropes that were used to tie her were from Pakistan. The umbrella was made by 2 Dutch companies and was distributed all over Europe. Her death was caused by blunt force trauma leading to broken ribs, ruptured spleen, and lungs. In addition, she had multiple unhealed injuries all over her body caused by long-term abuse. Both upper arms showed several fractures, which were then left to heal without treatment, causing her arms to malform. She had numerous cigarette burns covering her entire body, and numerous oblong scars on her forehead, torso, and legs. There were also several lacerations on her head, along with cauliflower ear. Her teeth were in poor condition as well. Police speculated that the girl was from the Pakistan-Afghanistan border, but had lived in the Frankfurt area for years. They could find no identity of the girl and no clues to who the perpetrator was. They would end up compiling a list of young women who had immigrated to Germany from Afghanistan and Pakistan. It came to over 1,000. Investigators were able to rule out each one, so police were left to theorize that the girl may have came to Germany under the radar. They suspected her of being a servant of a diplomat living in Frankfurt, making the perpetrator almost impossible to investigate due to diplomatic immunity. Another theory proposed was that she was brought in as a possible arranged marriage for a man who had already immigrated there. The case received a lot of coverage due to the young age and the terrible abuse endured. It is still known as one of the most notorious Jane Doe cases in Germany, and even after 2 decades, interest in the case remains. Girls see ghosts and run. On Halloween 2012, a YouTuber named Angel Ruiz would upload a video entitled, "Girls See Ghosts and Run." The video had a short description that read, quote, "Girl makes fun of friend for getting scared and crying until she sees it herself. Funny," end quote. The video comment section is turned off, but the video has close to 1.5 million views. The clip shows 2 small girls, maybe 4 to 5 years old, eating at a small table. They are having fun until one of them looks to the kitchen behind them. One girl seems to spot something that clearly upsets her. But to the viewers, however, nothing is in the background. The girl, who is now visibly shaken, turns to the woman filming and says, "That scared me." The woman, seeming confused, says, "I just turned off the light." The girl is still panicked though. At this point, her friend thinks it's a joke and starts making spooky noises. The woman filming asks why the girl is so upset. The girl then finally breaks down crying and goes to stand with the woman behind the camera. The other little girl continues to laugh until she finally seems to spot whatever the other girl's seen. She lets out a panicked scream before fleeing in terror to the adult. The camera keeps video in the kitchen to show there is nothing there. At least nothing the viewers can see. Many paranormal investigators claim that children are more in tune with the supernatural and are able to see things adults can't see, such as ghosts. Could this be what is happening on this video? Well, towards the end of the recording, the woman says, quote, "Angel is sleeping," end quote, referencing another possible person living in the home. Could it be that this angel is playing a prank on the kids? In the back room, it looks like there could be a window that the kids are looking at. and considering the video was uploaded on Halloween, it could be that this other person was wearing a mask and the whole thing was a prank. Gloria Ramriez. On February 19, 1994, around 8:15 p.m., a woman named Gloria Ramriez would be brought into the emergency room at the Riverside General Hospital by paramedics. She was suffering from severe heart palpitations and an abnormal pattern of breathing. The medical staff would try to sedate her, but Gloria was responding poorly to the treatment, so the staff tried to defibrillate her heart. Once that was done, several people saw a weird, oily appearance covering Ramirez's body, and they noticed a fruity, garlic-like odor that they at first thought was coming from her mouth. RN Susan Kane would draw blood from Ramirez's arm and notice an ammonia-like smell in the tube. There was also manila-colored crystals floating in her blood. At this point, Kane fainted and was removed from the room. The medical resident, Julie Gorchinski, would begin to feel nauseated and lightheaded and had to leave the trauma room. She would also end up fainting. Maureen Welch, a respiratory therapist who was assisting in the trauma room, would be the third to faint before the staff then ordered everyone to evacuate all emergency department patients outside to the parking lot. A skeleton crew stayed behind to stabilize Ramirez. However, she was pronounced dead about 45 minutes later from complications related to cervical cancer. Overall, 23 of the 37 staff became ill and 5 were hospitalized. The most seriously ill, Julie Korchinski, was in intensive care for 2 weeks, contracting apnea, hepatitis, pancreatitis, and necrosis of the bone marrow, which crippled her legs for months and required 3 surgeries. A hazmat team would search the hospital for every toxic substance they could think of, but found nothing. It would be left up to the coroner, who would end up doing the autopsy in a hazmat suit, and he found nothing. The woman dubbed as the toxic lady was not toxic at all. So what happened in that emergency room? Doctors stated that Gloria died from complications of cervical cancer, as she had been in the late stages prior to the event. But why was her body toxic to the medical team? There are 2 main theories surrounding this. Initially, the incident was written off as a mass hysteria event, but this has been for the most part discredited. Soon another theory was brought that gained a lot of traction. It was speculated that Gloria had been using DMSO, a chemical solvent that is used to reduce inflammation and pain. It was thought that she used so much that when the medical team used the defibrillator, it converted the solvent to dimethyl sulfate, which is extremely poisonous. This would also explain the garlic smell the team spoke of. However, other scientists have said this would be impossible. God. Oh wow, where to even start on this one? God, or more specifically, the existence of God and other deities, has been a subject of debate for centuries. In the West specifically, the first philosophical debates about God began with Aristotle and Plato. And there's just so many arguments for and against that it would be too much to include here. And to add to the fact that I don't really want to dabble in religious beliefs in my videos, so I'll just say there are numerous claims as to why God does exist, and there are just as many that claim that God doesn't exist. Green Boots. Green Boots is the name given to an unidentified body of a climber on Mount Everest. It is believed to be an Indian climber who died there in 1996 on the Indo-Tibetan Border Police expedition to Mount Everest. The 1996 expedition to Everest would become known as the 1996 Mount Everest disaster, in which 8 climbers got caught in a blizzard and died, leaving investigators unsure to which climber Green Boots was. The term Green Boots originated from the green Kauflatch mountaineer in boots on his feet. All expeditions from the north side encountered the body curled in a limestone cave until it was moved in 2014. The first recorded footage of the man was filmed on May 21, 2001, by French climber Pierre Perron. In the video, he is shown on his left side, facing toward the summit. Over time, the corpse became known as a landmark of the northern route for many climbers. Green Boots is close to one of the 300 corpses still remaining on Everest, the difference being his identity is still officially unknown. Green Children of Wooplit. This mystery revolves around the story of 2 children with green skin who reportedly showed up to the village of Wooplit in Suffolk, England in the 12th century. Other than their green skin and unfamiliar clothing, they looked completely normal. They spoke an unknown language and the pair refused all food for several days, until they came across some raw green beans, which they consumed eagerly. Eventually, they learned to eat other food, and they lost their green color. Shortly after this, the boy who was sickly died. A man named Richard D. Kane would take the girl and teach her English. She would eventually become a servant for his house. She adjusted quickly, and she would eventually explain that she and her brother had come from a land where the sun never shone and the light was like twilight. She claimed they were from St. Martin's Land and that everything was green. The original accounts of this event were written mostly by two historians, Ralph of Colgashaw and William of Newburgh. Ralph lived about 26 miles south of Wooplit, while William was far north of Wooplit, in Yorkshire. William would report his version was based on, quote, reports from a number of trustworthy sources, end quote, meaning he never actually witnessed the event, while Ralph would cite Sir Richard Decaen himself, who employed the girl in his household, again, meaning Ralph never actually witnessed the event. One version of the story said they could not explain how they got to Wooplit, saying only that they had been herding their father's cattle when they heard a loud noise and found themselves suddenly by the wolf pit where they were discovered. But the other account said they become lost when they followed the cattle into a cave and after being guided by the sound of bells, eventually emerged into the land of Wooplit. Although neither chronicler has ever offered an explanation to the strange event, many historians and others have offered up theories. Only a couple of these have ever gained real traction. One was that it was just a fairy tale told around the campfire, or bed stories told to children and somehow become passed off as the truth to both William and Ralph. It is also worth noting that other similar fairy tales were circulating in England at this time. Another more down-to-earth theory was that the children were Flemish immigrants, who were likely from Fornham St. Martin, as there had been a battle waged there during the Civil War, and it was theorized that the Flemish kids could have fled to Wooplit. To the small village, these two would have definitely caused bewilderment. And as for the color of their skin, it could have been explained by green sickness, which is caused by a dietary deficiency. However, skeptics of this theory point out Richard Decaen was a very educated man, and he would have most certainly knew the kids were speaking Flemish, even if he didn't understand it. Hat Man Phenomenon. The Hat Man phenomenon is a claim made by several people who have woken up in the dark to see a shadowy figure looming over them. It attracted widespread attention, inspiring documentaries on the subject, as well as a dedicated blog called the Hat Man Project, where people could share their experiences. The Hat Man appears like a ghost, and is usually seen just standing there. Many times he stands there minutes doing nothing before moving around a bit and vanishing. But unlike a ghost, the Hat Man is a shadow in the dark entirely. He is 6 feet or taller, with some accounts saying 8 to 10 feet tall, forcing him to crouch while standing. With glowing red eyes and always wearing a wide-brimmed hat, with old-fashioned clothing such as a long trench coat. He often carries a gold pocket watch attached by a chain to his belt that he'll occasionally glance at. Some accounts say he gives off a very powerful negative energy and feeds off the fear he causes. He has also been known to watch the sleeper through a mirror, or just sit in the corner watching the terrified individual. He shows up most often when a person is going through a lot of stress or turmoil to feed on the negative emotions. The Hat Man is not a new mystery, as it has been written about since ancient times. Shelley Adler, in her book Sleepy Paralysis, Nightmares, Nocebos, and the Mind-Body Connection, wrote, quote, "The entity has stalked human beings throughout history, not merely within a particular society or during a specific time," end quote. While Quartz.com wrote, quote, "People have described the frightening nighttime vision that paralyzes them with fear and seems to suck the breath right out of them, often by pressing directly up on their chest," end quote. And although every culture and language has a word describing this feeling, the scientific community just calls it sleep paralysis, citing that Hat Man along with other visions such as spiders and insects are super common among sleep paralysis sufferers. Other researchers bring up horror movie character Freddy Krueger as something people could be seeing during their sleep paralysis, since he wears a hat and is a very famous horror character. However, this doesn't explain why people saw the phenomenon before Freddy Krueger existed. And although sleep paralysis is definitely a real thing, why does everyone see the same man? And everyone that encounters the man swears that it was real and not a dream. This leads to more paranormal theories such as the Hat Man is a demon or an astral projection. Henry Hudson. Henry Hudson was an English explorer in the early 17th century, known mostly for his vast exploration of Canada and parts of the northeastern United States. He's probably known more for his disappearance. In 1607 and 1608, Hudson made 2 attempts on behalf of English merchants to find the rumored Northeast Passage to China via a route in the Arctic Circle. Later in 1609, he would land in modern-day New York metro area and explore the region on behalf of the Dutch East India Company. By now, Hudson's fame had grown quite a bit, and in 1610 the English came calling again, and for the second time they asked him to find the northern route to China. And on August 2nd, the ship would enter Hudson Bay. Excitement among the crew was very high due to the expectation they had finally discovered the Northwest Passage, Hudson would spend the following months mapping and exploring the eastern shores, but he was never able to find the passage. In November, the ship would become trapped in ice, leading the crew to move ashore for the winter. When the ice cleared in the spring of 1611, Hudson made plans to move further west to look for the passage. By this time, though, the crew was fed up and insisted to go home. Hudson declined, and things would come to a head. Eventually, a mutiny would occur that June, and since the mutiny was successful and Hudson was never found, the story is very one-sided, so no one is sure exactly what happened. According to the best-known account, the ship's navigator Abacuk Prickett, yes, that was his real name, tells how they set Hudson, his son, and 7 crewmen, men who were either sick or loyal to Hudson, adrift in a small open boat, effectively marooning them in Hudson Bay. They left them with clothing, powder and shot, pikes, an iron pot, some food, and other miscellaneous items. However, Prickett's account has always been doubted, as he blamed the alleged leaders of the uprising on 2 men who had been good and loyal friends to Hudson for years. These men, unsurprisingly, did not survive the trip back to Europe and were unable to dispute the accusation. Neither were the mutineers ever punished, most likely because of the knowledge they acquired traveling to the New World. But this leaves the question, what exactly happened to Hudson? One often overlooked thing in this story is the fact that when the mutineers returned, it was noted that there was blood on the ship deck, meaning the most likely scenario is Hudson and the men that remained loyal were killed and never let off the boat to begin with. And it's not likely the mutineers would have ever shared their dwindling supplies anyway. Other possible theories are the men made it to land and were either killed by the Cree Indians or possibly joined them, or possibly built a structure and waited for a rescue that never showed. I really don't want to cover this next one, so I'm going to make it brief. Him is a gay pornographic film where the film's protagonist is a man with an erotic obsession with Christ. Yeah. Anyways, it is one of the most sought after films in the entire lost media community. Largely because for a period of time, it was believed the whole thing was a hoax. Now enough proof has surfaced to confirm that it does exist, but nothing from the film has been found. Inside a black hole. I have to be honest, I'm just not really into this mystery at all, or a lot of the scientific ones, so I'll keep it brief. Scientists believe a thing called singularity is within a black hole. A singularity is what all the matter in the black hole gets crushed to. One of the more out there theories states that wormholes could exist in a black hole. Jiba Fofi, also known as the Congolese giant spider. Jiba Fofi is a type of large spider said to inhabit the forest of the Congo, although other sightings have taken place across the world. The stories surrounding this creature say the spiders dig a shallow tunnel under tree roots and camouflage it with a large screen of leaves. They then create an almost invisible web between their burrow and a nearby tree, staging the whole area with a network of trip lines. Then the creature's next meal will trip the line, alerting the spider. The spider then chases the victim to its web. Similar behavior of the trapdoor spider. The eggs are a pale yellow-white and shaped like peanuts. Natives claim the hatchlings are bright yellow with a purple abdomen. Their color becomes darker and brown as they mature. Some of the indigenous people claim that these spiders were once quite common, but now are very rare, and the last one was sighted in 2014. The first sighting documented by a Western observer was in the 1890s by British missionary Arthur John Symes, when him and his men came upon one of the creatures. The men got themselves tangled in an enormous web, and 2 giant spiders, one 2 feet in length and the other one 4 feet, presumably male and female, came out of their web and attacked and killed them. Accounts differ from here, as some accounts say Symes was also bitten and died, while others do not mention this. What is clear is that Symes was able to drive the spiders away with his gun. The next documented sighting happened in 1938 by an English traveling couple passing through a jungle in the Congo. Writer George Eberhardt, quote, R.K. Lloyd and his wife were motoring through the Belgium Congo in 1938 when they saw a large object crossing the trail in front of them. At first they thought it was a cat or a monkey, but soon they realized it was a spider with legs nearly 3 feet, end quote. Cryptozoologist William J. Gibbons would also claim that on one of his expeditions, natives would tell him about their experiences with the spider. Quote, these giant ground-dwelling spiders prey on the diminutive forest antelope, birds, and other small game, and are said to be extremely dangerous, not to mention highly venomous, end quote. There was also at least one case where a dog was dragged off from a village by the creature. In September 2018, YouTube user CryptoDragon UK would re-upload a video from 2013 of an alleged sighting caught on night vision camera near a water hole next to a stream in Mozambique. The creature appears out of the darkness for a brief moment, then scurries out into the darkness off the screen. However, the video is far from concrete evidence, and biologists have said that a spider's unique respiratory system isn't strong enough to sustain anything much larger than a bird-eating species of spider. The Jack family. I have already made a more in-depth video exploring the Jack family disappearance, and you can find it by clicking here. Jack the Ripper. And this is no doubt the most famous unsolved serial killer case in history. So with that being said, I'm not going to spend much time on it. Everyone knows this case. There's been hundreds, maybe thousands, of suspects proposed by investigators and writers alike, and I couldn't do it justice by trying to name the best ones. Instead, for the few that have not heard about this case, Jack the Ripper was a serial killer that killed 5 women in the poor districts of Whitechapel and East End of London in 1888. They were typically prostitutes, and he would cut their throat before mutilating their abdominal area. His removal of their internal organs lends credence to the fact that he had anatomical or surgical knowledge. His fame in part is due to the taunting letters he supposedly sent to the media outlets and Scotland Yard, in which one of the letters came with a preserved kidney taken from one of the victims. There were an additional 6 murders committed in the same area and same time frame. Investigators have never been able to definitively link them to the Jack the Ripper murders. The cases went unsolved for over a century, yet interest in the case is still high. Jim Gray. Jim Gray was one of the most innovative and distinguished computer scientists ever, who is best known for his work on databases and transaction processing systems. He is credited with devising the database systems that run ATMs and manage online shopping transactions. He also built the first program that allowed people to peer into space without a telescope or see satellite images of their homes on their computer. But on January 28, 2007, the 63-year-old Gray would vanish. Jim, who was an experienced sailor, would board his sailboat and make a short trip off the coast of San Francisco to scatter his mother's ashes at Farallon Islands. Sadly, Jim would never return. And although that doesn't seem that mysterious, there were some oddities about his disappearance. For one, the weather was clear, making it a great day for sailing. But the real mystery was there was no distress signal ever sent, nor did the boat's automatic emergency position indicating radio beacon ever emit a signal, or at least it was never detected. The Coast Guard would search over 40,000 square miles by plane, helicopter, and boat for 4 days and found nothing. The search would go as far north as Oregon and as far south as Santa Barbara. A week later, Digital Global Satellite would do a scan of the area, and it too found nothing. By late May, some of the most sophisticated underwater equipment would be deployed to look for Jim's boat, and it too came back with nothing. Several sailors reported seeing Gray's red sailboat near the Farallon Islands, and investigators would search the area they figured the boat could have went if it had been set adrift. Officials would also state that if the boat had sunk, they would have seen some kind of debris from the boat or an oil slick, yet there was nothing. His family would note in the past he had tried to sail all the way to Seattle, but backed out for fear of not making it. This could have been attempted again, as Jim's wife was out of town for the weekend, and she noted Jim had no plans for the entire weekend other than scattering his mom's ashes. Could an emotional Jim have left the islands and threw caution to the wind and plunged forward to Seattle, only to sink or get blown off course? Possibly, but it was documented by Jim's family and friends that he was a very capable sailor, and he was very cautious, not likely to attempt such an undertaking, as well as always wearing a safety harness to keep him from falling overboard. Furthermore, Jim's boat was state-of-the-art for that time. The lifeboat would inflate by itself if it detected the boat was sinking, as well as the craft had the ability to send out an emergency signal once sinking started. Even with good weather though, there are several things that could have happened. Jim could have been disabled by a stroke or a heart attack. He could have been knocked unconscious. It's possible that the weather was so nice that Jim didn't even bother wearing a harness and was simply thrown overboard. He could have collided with a submerged cargo container, or even a pod of whales. It's even possible that the boat sprung a leak and filled too rapidly for Jim to notice and escape. It's also worth mentioning that he could have sailed into a shipping lane and got hit. But the Coast Guard tracked down every ship that came through there during that time and could find no evidence of a collision. Other theories have been proposed, such as Jim taking the boat somewhere it couldn't be found and then committing suicide, or even living out the rest of his life on a tropical island, or in Mexico, or even Kenya has been suggested. Jodi Huisentruit. This is another missing person case in which I've done a much more in-depth video on. If you're so inclined to watch, you can click here. Johnny Gosch. Another heartbreaking case most mystery buffs have no doubt heard of, so I'll be brief. On September 5th, 1982, Johnny Gosch would make his way on his paper route in Des Moines, Iowa around 6 to 7 a.m. At some point on his route, at least 2 witnesses would say they saw Johnny talking to a man in a blue two-tone car. One of these men was John Rossi, who said he thought something was strange, so he approached Johnny, who told him that the man was asking for directions. The second witness was another paperboy, who would then see Johnny head a block north when he noticed another man following him. A neighbor would then hear a door slam, and a silver Ford Fairman sped away, north from where Johnny's wagon was found. Johnny's parents would then receive phone calls from customers complaining about not getting their paper. Johnny's father would then go look for him when he found a wagon full of papers. He would immediately call the police. Police would initially wait 72 hours before searching for Johnny, as that was the policy at the time. They would also first claim that he was a runaway, before recanting and claiming abduction. The one positive to come out from this whole sad affair was the reversal of the 72-hour waiting policy. Now police immediately search for any missing child. But what makes this case more mysterious than most abductions are the claims made by Noreen Gosch. She would claim only a few months later that her son was spotted in Oklahoma when a boy yelled to a woman for help before being dragged off by 2 men. But most bizarrely, she would claim in 1997 that Johnny would knock on her door at 2:30 a.m., and he would tell her he was kidnapped but let go once he got older, and was now living under an assumed identity, and it was not safe for him to return. She's also claimed a lot of other bizarre things, like receiving photos of Johnny on her doorstep, to being scammed by someone claiming to return her son for $100,000, and no one is really sure what to make of it. One thing often forgotten in this case is the fact that 2 other boys would go missing under similar circumstances in Des Moines only a couple years later. Eugene Martin, another paperboy, and Mark Allen, who was walking to a friend's house, meaning the most likely scenario was that it was just a serial killer. However, police have never been able to find a connection between the cases, leaving many to still believe Noreen's account that he was kidnapped and sold into trafficking. Jon Benet Ramsey. And yet another super famous case, this one from the 90s. And since everyone knows the details of this case, and since certain individuals involved with this case are lawsuit happy, I will not go deep in on this one. But Jon Benet was a child beauty queen who was murdered in her family's home at the age of 6 in Boulder, Colorado. A long handwritten ransom note was found in the home. Her father John would find her body 7 hours later in the basement after she had been reported missing. She had a broken skull and had been strangled. Police initially suspected the ransom note was written by the mother Patsy and that the body had been staged to cover up the murder. However, the Ramseys insisted that someone had broken in and killed Jon Benet and left a letter only to escape. Online sleuths and writers all agree that the police investigation was botched from the beginning. Almost 30 years later, and no one has ever been indicted, the theories fall into 2 basic camps. Someone either broke into the home and killed Jon Benet before fleeing, or someone in the home was responsible. Joseph Merrick. Joseph Merrick was an Englishman known for having severe deformities. Most people know him by his stage name, the Elephant Man. His abnormalities would start to form before the age of 5, and at the age of 22, he would do some tours with the sideshows and quote, freak shows, before eventually going back to London Hospital to spend the rest of his life. Now the mystery is, what exactly was wrong with Joseph Merrick? As early as 1888, a dermatologist named Henry Crocker would state that Merrick's condition might actually be a combination of pachydermatocele and some other type of bone deformity, perhaps caused by changes to the nervous system. However, the main theory speculated since 1986 is that he had Protus syndrome, which is a rare genetic disorder that can cause tissue overgrowth. Yet, this is still unconfirmed. Jumping Frenchman of Maine. The jumping Frenchman of Maine is an extremely rare disorder characterized by an unusually extreme startle reaction. The reaction is a natural occurrence and is a rapid involuntary response to a sudden or unexpected stimuli. Although startle reaction is a normal human response, individuals with this disorder are way exaggerated or abnormal. Symptoms usually begin after puberty and consist of reactions such as jumping, screaming, flailing of the arms, hitting or throwing objects. It can be caused by things such as unexpected noises, sudden gestures, unexpected physical contact like a poke in the ribs. After the startlement, affected individuals may repeat back words or phrases in a parrot-like manner, or they may involuntarily mimic, or imitate movements or gestures. Some swear or utter obscene words or phrases. Some exhibit automatic or forced obedience after a statement which they automatically respond to simple commands such as jump, run, or hit. The symptoms decrease in frequency as individuals age. The exact cause is unknown, although some speculate it could be a neurological disorder, while others think it is a cultural conditioning thing. Kaz II. Kaz II was a 32-foot catamaran that departed Airlie Beach on April 15, 2007, heading for Townsville, Queensland. The journey would take the three-man crew around northern Australia to Western Australia. On April 18, 2007, a helicopter would spot the catamaran floating adrift in the Great Barrier Reef. They suspected the crew was in distress and would notify port authorities. By April 20th, maritime authorities would catch up to the boat and board it. They found the three-man crew missing. Quote, "What they found was a bit strange in that everything was normal. There was just no sign of the crew," end quote. The Emergency Management Office would release a statement saying that the food and flatware were on the table. A laptop was set up and turned on. The engine was still running. They also confirmed the boat's emergency systems, including its radio and GPS, were functional, as well as having a full complement of the life jackets. The only thing out of the ordinary was the sails had been shredded badly. The boat would be towed in to do a more in-depth investigation. They found no evidence of foul play or third-party involvement. A video recording would be found that showed footage taken by the crew during their trip. Some of it was even recorded on the last day. However, nothing of real interest emerged other than the sea, which was a bit choppy, and none of the men were wearing life jackets. The disappearance has been compared to the Mary Celeste, and there's not a lot of really good explanations out there. Although the most accepted theory is that one of the men's fishing lures became entangled on the port side rudder, and as he was trying to get it loose, he fell from the boat. One of the other men would have tried to come to his rescue, leaving one man on board. This person would have tried to start the motor, and then realized that he would have to drop the sails first. As he made his way to do that, the sea or the wind could have caused the boat to move in such a way that it caused the boom, which was just a pole in the boat, to swing around, knocking the last man off the boat. None of them had life jackets and were all poor swimmers. Other theories include the hypothesis that they become stuck on a sandbar near George Point, where the last radio message was made. The men jumped out to push it free, and a gust of wind blew the boat and it drifted away, leaving them stranded. Yet, no bodies have ever been found there. There's also the theory that a freak wave could have took them out. Other theories include pirate theories, insurance fraud theories, and the ever-fanciful Kraken attack. Kenny Veach. Kenny Veach, better known by his YouTube handle Snakebit McGee, was a long-distance hiker/explorer. He would post videos of his hiking trips on his channel, and prided himself on the physical toll he could put himself through on his hikes. While he was barely active on his own channel, with just 5 videos uploaded, he was well known for being active in the comment section of other hiking channels. In late 2014, Veach would post the following in the comment section for the video entitled, "Son of Area 51 Technician." Quote, "This ain't nothing. I am a long-distance hiker. One time during one of my hikes out by Nellis Air Force Base, I found a hidden cave. The entrance to the cave was shaped like a perfect capital M. I always enter every cave I find, but as I began to enter this particular cave, my whole body began to vibrate. The closer I got to the cave entrance, the worse the vibrating became. Suddenly I became very scared and hightailed it out of there. That was one of the strangest things that ever happened to me." End quote. In response to this comment, numerous YouTube users encouraged Veach to find the cave and enter again, this time documenting it on his channel, and Veach would do just that. Yet, this time he would not find the supposed M cave. Many followers would criticize Veach for not being able to find evidence of the cave, while others suggested going out a second time. While one lone commenter, Lemmy Kilmister, would say, quote, "No, don't go back to that cave. If you find that cave entrance, don't go in, you won't get out," end quote. But Veach set out on November 10th, 2014 to find the cave once more. Only this time, he would fail to return home, and a search for him would begin. They would discover his cell phone at the mouth of an abandoned mine shaft, believed by many to be the same mine shaft seen during the M Cave hike video. But after that, the trail went cold. Later on, a woman would pop up in the comment section claiming to be Kenny's girlfriend, and she stated he still hadn't been found and didn't expect him to be found for many months. She would go on to basically say that she thought Kenny had committed suicide, that he had battled depression for many years and would not see a doctor or take his medication. She added that he told her if he decided to kill himself, no one will ever find him. Furthermore, Kenny didn't even take his video camera to record this hike, which was odd to say the least. But if Kenny didn't commit suicide, what are the other possibilities? Some say Kenny may have stumbled into a drug deal, or perhaps someone disposing of a body, and they had to silence him. There's also the fringe theory that the nearby Nellis Air Force Base had something to do with it, as well as the theory that Kenny never existed, and was created as an art project and Kenny was the actor. My favorite theory, though, has to do with Kenny's videos. He only has 5. Outside the one hiking video for the M Cave, all the rest were basically advertisements for products that Kenny had invented, including one of a pitch to get on the TV show Shark Tank. The theory is Kenny faked the entire thing to get people to notice his inventions, and then would come back and cash out on them. Or that Shark Tank would try to contact him somehow, but when this didn't come to pass, Kenny just went quiet and left it to be a mystery. Knowledge. This next one really blows my mind, and I had never really considered it. But before we dive into it, let's explore the 4 ways we acquire knowledge. The first being innate, like we know how to breathe, eat, and drink water to survive. The second is observational, meaning we know colors like red, blue, we know how a dog's bark sound, etc. Third is non-observational knowledge that we have attained by our thoughts alone. Finally, some knowledge is gained partially by observing and partially thinking. So then we come to the mystery part of this. Is knowledge real? Well, apparently there's a theory that we lack any form of knowledge, and furthermore it's impossible to gain it. It basically comes down to one thing, the dream argument, which states, while we dream, we don't usually realize it. And since the vast majority of the time we don't realize it, how do we know we're not dreaming right now? And if we're dreaming right now, that means your senses can't be trusted, which means any knowledge cannot be observed, which means perpetual knowledge does not exist. Pretty crazy, huh? Living short-faced bear. A short-faced bear was a prehistoric bear which roamed across North America. It is known to be one of the largest land mammal carnivores to ever exist. It was believed to have went extinct 11,000 years ago. However, some cryptozoologists contend that they may still exist in North America and Russia. The reason this is a viable theory is because one was believed to have been discovered by Clinton Hart Merriam. Who is that, you ask? Well, he is one of the most well-respected zoologists to ever live. He is known more commonly as the father of mammalogy. So this guy was legit. And the story goes in 1864, Inuit hunters would shoot and kill an enormous yellow-furred bear and give it to naturalist Robert McFarlane, who would in turn ship it to the Smithsonian, where it was placed in storage and forgotten. Eventually, Dr. Merriam would uncover the remains, and after hearing the story of the bear, he stated that it had been shot very far outside the brown bear's normal range, and concluded that it couldn't be a brown bear. In 1918, he would call it the, quote, ancient unexpected bear, end quote. Keep in mind, this was the man that had documented and described tons of plants and animals in North America in the late 1800s and early 1900s. He was not apt to exaggerate. To add to this, British biologist Ivan T. Sanderson stated early settlers to North America encountered huge bears inhabiting the high plains areas. They hunted bison, and they were much larger than the grizzly bears that settlers would also see. He would claim that the bear went extinct when the bison population became overhunted. There's also reportedly bears in the Northwestern Territory and northern British Columbia, Alberta, and Saskatchewan that is capable of carrying off a moose. It's called a bulldog bear, but it's believed to be the living short-faced bear. To make it a little more crazy, many cryptozoologists speculate Bigfoot sightings are really the short-faced bear, because they had the same limb proportions of a gorilla and have flat faces. But we know something today that Merriam was not aware of then, and that is that grizzly polar hybrids do occur occasionally, and Merriam's description of the bear fits very well, especially the pale tan fur, along with the oddly shaped skull. Also, in 2008, the show Monster Quest would take the skull to paleontologist Dr. Blaine Schubert to examine. He stated that he was 100% sure that it was a brown bear. However, without DNA, we can't be sure what Merriam documented. Long Island serial killer. This case had so much going on that I made a longer, more in-depth video about it right here. Luna Park Ghost Train Demon. On the night of June 9th, 1979, at an amusement park called Luna Park Sydney in New Wales, Australia, a fire would break out inside the Luna Park Ghost Train. And due to a combination of things, such as low water pressure, understaffing within the park, inadequate coverage of the ghost train by the park's fire hose system, the fire was able to engulf the entire ride. The fire would eventually be brought under control in about an hour, around 11:15 p.m. 35 people were on the ride when the smoke filled the tunnel, and the alarm was sounded. Staff rushed to pull the people out of the cars. At 11:30, when the smoke cleared enough to enter, the staff would enter the tunnel again. And although they thought they had saved everyone, to their shock, they found 7 bodies in the tunnel. John Godson and his 2 children, Damien and Craig, and 4 college students, Jonathan Billings, Richard Carroll, Michael Johnson, and Seamus Rahili. The park would be shut down and an investigation was launched. And although the park was found to be at fault for not developing an adequate fire suppression system, there was no indication that the fire was started from bad wiring or some kind of faulty equipment. Although in later years, many people would suspect a cover-up. Many theories over the years have came up about what exactly happened, with nothing ever proven to this day. There was even an attempt to link it to a major crime figure, Abraham Saffron, when his own niece would do an interview with the Sydney Morning Herald, claiming he had done it to gain control of Luna Park's lease, although this has never been backed up with any proof. However, the real mystery we're looking at here came about once John's wife Jenny Godson got back the developed photographs that were taken that day at the park. While looking over them, she came across one in particular, one of her son Damien. It showed the little boy posing next to an intimidating figure wearing a demonic-looking mask, made from cow skins with horns on his head. His mom thought maybe that it was an actor employed by the park for the ghost train. She would go to the park later to ask for help in identifying the man. The park would tell her they had not hired any actors or anyone wearing that costume, and that they had no idea who he was, though they did eventually discover the man's costume was that of Moloch. In the Bible, Moloch was a god or demon that was said to have burned children as part of a sacrifice, which, considering what had just happened, made things very eerie to say the least. Jenny from this point believed that the fire was not an accident. Many people agree with her, as some believe the man was potentially a disturbed person that dabbled in the occult and was trying to make sacrifices to Moloch, or that he was hired as part of an arson attempt by the aforementioned crime boss. Others claim that it was faulty wiring or a discarded cigarette, and the costume man was just purely coincidental. Man of the Hole. In 1996, in the western state of Rondônia in Brazil, a rumor began to spread. The tale of a wild man living alone in the forest. Brazilian field agents specializing in isolated tribes soon found one of his huts, a tiny shelter of palm thatch with a mysterious hole dug in the center of the floor. As they continued to search, they would eventually discover the man was on the run, from shelter to shelter, abandoning each hut as soon as loggers or agents got too close. No other tribes in the region lived like he did. The digging of a rectangular hole inside of the huts with what seemed to have no purpose. It didn't seem like he was a castaway from any documented tribe. Eventually, the agents caught up to him. He was in his mid-30s, unclothed, and always carried a bow and arrow. He mostly hunted wild game, but he also grew a few crops around his hut, including corn and papaya. He also collected honey from hives. He is believed to be the last surviving member of his tribe. His language is unknown, and the tribe he belonged to is unknown. It is believed that the other members of his tribe were killed by illegal loggers and ranchers, who have been known to hire mercenaries to remove indigenous peoples from the land. In 2007, Brazil would declare a 31 square mile limit around him off limits to trespassing and development. He was later expanded by 11.5 miles. This has helped somewhat, although the man was attacked by a farmer in 2009, but he survived. Due to all this, it's unlikely the man will ever allow anyone within reach, as he has fired the bow and arrow at multiple people, and it's unlikely that we will ever know exactly who he is, where he came from, or anything about his people. Mantis Man. Mantis Man is a bug-like creature reported to have been seen in Hackettstown, New Jersey, near the Musconetcong River. The bug resembles a praying mantis and is roughly around 7 feet tall. There are only a few alleged sightings of the cryptid. 2 came from men who were out fishing and saw it near the water, which is unusual since praying mantis aren't known to spend time around water. However, with its huge size, it reportedly could touch the bottom of the river without its whole body drifting away. Mantis Man is not aggressive, and runs away when people get too close to it. On the television show Monsters and Mysteries in America, it was revealed that a police report from a man named Mr. Strickler made about the Mantis Man. Quote, I saw something strange a few weeks ago on the Mekong River near my home in Hackettstown, New Jersey. I was driving home from the drugstore on Newburgh Road. As I drove near the bridge over the river, I noticed to my left something that I thought was a fisherman standing in the river just off the south bank. I slowed the car and looked closer. It wasn't a person, and it was transparent, like a weird shape. It moved slowly towards the bank and into the trees. I drove further so I could see it coming out of the trees. That's the last I saw of it. It was tall, 8 foot or so, and had long thin arms hanging off of it. The color was a pale brown, but I could see through it. The head was small compared to the body. It was sunny that day, so I thought it might be the glare from the water. But after I thought back, I realized I wasn't seeing a mirage or glare. I checked the internet and didn't see anything about it. I mentioned it to a coworker in my office at lunch on Wednesday. He gave me the strangest look. I thought, uh-oh, he thinks I'm nuts. We went back to his computer and brought up the Hackettstown forum with the Mantis Man witness, end quote. Another witness also reported that he was fly fishing when, quote, I am chest high in the river. The first thing I seen was a grasshopper thigh, but bending forward like a human. Then the whole form. He's looking at me over his shoulder, moving up the bank, astonished, amazed, end quote. Some cryptozoologists think the Mantis Man comes from an experiment gone wrong, and someone released it near a river. Others disagree with this, as they think there's been too many sightings for just one creature. It's also been pointed out that, although it does look like a praying mantis, it could be an alien. In all likelihood, it's just a hoax. Marilyn Manson's Groupie. This is yet another lost media mystery. It's a partially lost 1996 short film created by shock rock star Marilyn Manson, sometime between 1996 and 1998. Manson held a house party in which he intended to make a short film about. He informed the guests that a woman would be arriving later and that he would be filming her. It begins oddly enough with a shot of Manson giving oral sex to Jodi White, who is Manson's bandmate. The groupie arrives and is invited inside. When she gets inside, Manson and the rest of the band make her do increasingly perverse things, such as drinking Stephen Byers, another one of Manson's bandmate, urine, which she only does it after convincing Manson to also drink it. After this, details are unknown, although it's believed she was tied up at one point, and bloodshed and a gun are supposedly involved. The guests were said to have been disturbed by the incident, and they didn't know if this was real or a possible prank by Manson. Only 3 people have ever seen the short film Groupie, that being Manson's manager Tony Suella, Andy Dick, and Manson himself. Suella begged Manson to never release the film, as he thought a criminal case could be brought against him. He told Manson, quote, please hide the masters. If anyone sees this, you'll go to jail and your career will be over, end quote. Manson would never release the film. Although a few short segments make an appearance in the video album Dead to the World, the segment shows a tied up woman in a chair, with Manson off screen. He then intimidates her into repeating the phrase, quote, Jesus loves me because the Bible tells me so, end quote, over and over and over. But one rumor that surrounded the whole story since the beginning did end up being true, when in 2021, a woman named Paula Weiss would come forward and reveal she was the woman in the video. And not only that, she would go on to say that she was an actress at the time, as well as Manson's girlfriend. She was 21 and was paid well to do it, and it was all a legally documented transaction. She stated that she was perfectly fine the entire time and never scared at all, and that she was amazed that people always believed all the rumors about it. With that being said, the film has still never seen the light of day, except for a few small clips, and with Manson's recent troubles, it's not likely we'll ever see it. The Martin family. This is an unsolved missing family case that I've already did a much longer video about. If you are interested in that, you can click here to watch it. Meso Blues. If you're a kid that grew up in the late 90s, you almost certainly know about the cartoon character Johnny Bravo. The show revolves around a sunglass-wearing, muscle-bound Elvis-like young man who spends most of his time getting rejected by women and ending up in some of the most bizarre situations. The show ran from 1997 until 2004. It was nominated in 4 different awards, as well as launching the career of Seth MacFarlane. However, the origin of the show comes from a short known as Meso Blues. This was the prototype for Johnny Bravo and was produced in 1993. The show's creator, Van Partible, created the character for his senior thesis project, and his professor Don McLaughlin would show a friend working at Hanna-Barbera. They loved it so much they asked Partible to make a 7-minute short based on Meso Blues. This became the original Johnny Bravo short. The character would see changes, as the Meso Blues original Johnny had black hair, a different physical appearance, different personality, as well as not even having the same name. Despite being a key piece to such a highly recognizable cartoon and character, the Meso Blues has never been made public. The only footage to ever be seen are a few short mute clips found as a bonus feature on the Johnny Bravo Season 1 DVD set. It is a total of about 15 seconds of the original 7-minute origin. Partible revealed in January 2022 that he owns the only VHS copy of the short, as well as the digital copy on his hard drive. He doesn't ever plan to release it publicly as he wishes to preserve the novelty of sharing it with others, as a quote, fun little thing, end quote, in private viewings, rather than publicly on the internet for all to see. Although it's not technically lost, it is a piece of cartoon history that the lost media community still hopes will be released or leaked at some point. Minecraft Lost Versions. Following up with another lost media mystery is the Minecraft Lost Versions mystery. You most likely already know what Minecraft is, but for the few that don't, Minecraft was developed in May 2009, and has went on to become one of the best-selling video games of all time. It originally started as a Java applet to be played in the browser. The game would go through several stages of development, with many updates and patches being applied, from small bug fixes to large changes, like most games. However, due to the fact that the game started as a browser applet, many early builds of the game have been completely lost. But last June, the holy grail of the Minecraft lost media community was found on an old laptop, the elusive version Alpha 1.1.1, which was only available to the fans of the game for just 3 hours in 2010, before being taken down once it was realized there was a glitch. Finding this lost version generated way more interest than finding all the other lost versions. This media mystery is not one I spend a lot of time on though, as there are numerous versions lost, and too many to go through. Plus there are several good videos on YouTube already explaining the history much better than I can in this format. Mirror matter. We dip back into physics on this one. Mirror matter is a hypothetical counterpart to ordinary matter. This theory is just what it sounds like, that every particle in the universe has a mirrored particle, meaning there's double the amount of particles in the universe, if the theory is real. Mirror matter ties in with one of our previous mysteries, that of dark matter. It's speculated that mirror particles make up dark matter, and just like with dark matter, there's no way to detect it or prove that it exists, as of yet anyways. And I know I sound like a broken record, but these physics mysteries are just too beyond me to give an in-depth analysis on. Plus it's a bit boring to me. Moon formation. One thing that people generally take for granted is the moon. Not only does it give us light at night, but its gravity also pulls at the earth, causing predictable rises and falls in sea levels, known as tides. Sea travel has long been predicated by the tides of the sea. But with all the science about the moon, there's one big question that remains. Just how was the moon formed? The leading theory is that in the early history of our solar system, a Mars-sized body collided with a brand new planet called Earth. This threw vaporized chunks of the planet's crust into space. Gravity would pull the pieces together, which end up creating the moon, the largest moon in our solar system. A similar theory states that instead of one major impact event creating the moon, the Earth was instead pummeled by multiple impact events, and over time, gravity caused the material to collect in what is now known as the moon. Other researchers believe that the Earth and moon came about at the same time after a massive crash of 2 other planets. There's also the captured theory, which just speculates that the moon was passing Earth when it got snagged in its gravitational pull and essentially got stuck forever. This theory was ruled out when lunar rocks showed the same isotope composition as the Earth. Most scientists tend to believe an impact was involved, and the theory has existed for a few decades now, and no one has ever been able to discredit it. Mr. Cruel. This is another unsolved case that I did a much deeper video on. He was one of Australia's most notorious criminals, and involved in numerous sexual assaults, and he was never captured. If you want to watch, you can click here. Mystery booms. Mystery booms are loud booming noises or explosions that can rattle windows, houses, and even shake people, like an earthquake. yet cannot be traced back to a point of origin. They are only deemed mystery booms after earthquakes, sonic booms, thunder, and man-made origins can be eliminated, leaving the sound and vibration a mystery. These booms have been reported sporadically throughout history, but have seen an increase in reports in recent years, most likely due to the widespread use of security cameras. Although no one is sure where the skyquakes come from, a few theories have been speculated. For coastal areas, one theory is the possibility that it could be large waves crashing up against a cliff or a beach. Surfers have reported this phenomenon for years. Methane erupting from the ocean floor can also cause these booms. One surprising source is possibly sand dunes. As scientist David Hill would say, quote, "Under proper circumstances, sand dunes are capable of producing a variety of low-level whispering, whistling, singing, humming, or squeaking sounds, and less commonly, loud booming sounds," end quote. Others have pointed out a meteor exploding in the atmosphere would produce the same effect, while another commonly held theory is military exercises or testing of secret technologies, which are classified. Negative energy. Negative energy is a concept used to explain certain fields in physics, such as gravitational fields. And again, this is way over my head, but I'll use a simple explanation that Stephen Hawking left us with. He said, imagine a man that wants to make a hill out of dirt. So he gets a shovel and starts to dig. After hours of digging, he has a nice sized hill, but he also left a hole. The hill is the positive energy, while the hole is the negative energy. Now comparing that to the Big Bang, which created massive amounts of positive energy, also produced the same amount of negative energy, meaning the sum of the negative and the positive energy in the universe always equals zero. If negative energy is real, it could be used in wormholes and warp drives for spaceships. However, most scientists believe negative energy is science fiction and not science fact. Negative mass. Just how many physics mysteries are on this chart? Okay, again, this is too deep for me, and too deep for this video, so I'll give a very simple and short explanation. Negative mass is another theory that could allow for hypothetical technologies, mainly time travel, but also other types, such as faster than light warp drives. Negative mass, not to be confused with antimatter, is exactly what it sounds like. What if something weighed -1 pound, or -10 pounds? Well, really weird things would start to happen. Imagine if you had a ball on a string hanging it down from your hand. You suddenly jerk your hand to the left. For a split second, the ball remains in place before following your hand. With negative mass, the opposite happens. The ball would actually go in front of your hand to the left before you moved it. Or think about riding in a car that's going really fast. Instead of it pinning you back to the seat, like it typically would, negative mass would make you lean forward. And if you slammed on the brakes, instead of getting thrown forward, you would get thrown backwards. So if negative mass does exist, then it would be attracted to positive mass. But positive mass would be repelled by it. So if you had a negative mass object, similar to the same size of a positive mass object, and you put them near each other, the negative mass object would chase the positive mass object infinitely. And it would speed up until it reached close to the speed of light. And then, that could be used for faster than light technologies. Kinda neat, I guess. Now they hear it all the time. This is supposedly a lost public service announcement that aired sometime in the late 70s to early 80s. The PSA was for people that didn't know their symptoms was possibly related to tinnitus. It featured these frosted glass mannequin heads with internal flashing lights, while the typical humming and buzzing sounds of tinnitus played in the background. The service announcement ended with the quote, "Now they hear it, all the time," end quote. The commercial, which is thought to have aired exclusively in the New York area, or maybe broader Northeast, was known to be incredibly creepy. One Reddit user would remember a slightly different variation. He remembered, quote, "Static shot of a dramatically lit mannequin head, black-gray background with overlapping tracks of different everyday noise building up steadily until it all becomes white noise and then abruptly goes silent. After a beat, 3 red laser spots ping on the temple of a mannequin head and an ultra-high-pitched tone pulses slowly. It freaked me out," end quote. However, it's never been posted anywhere online, despite several people claiming to remember it. So was it a real public service announcement? Creepypasta? Or just a false memory? You decide. Person. Person is derived from the Latin word persona, which was derived from a Greek word used to denote mask worn by an actor. However, it's also been a central discussion among theologians for centuries in regards to incarnation and the Holy Trinity. And that discussion, not the one in the psychological sense, is what got it placed on the mystery iceberg. The question revolves around a man's soul in relation to his personality and God. It discusses his relationship with mankind having a conscience and free will. But I don't like getting into religious topics on this channel, so we'll skip ahead. Phantom kangaroos. The phantom kangaroo mystery is the reports of kangaroos or wallabies and or their tracks showing up in locations where the animal is not known to be native to. Accounts of this have taken place in Japan, New Zealand, Europe, and the United States. The earliest known report in the US was in 1899, when New Richmond, Wisconsin was hit by a tornado the day a circus happened to be in town. According to reports, in the midst of the storm, a kangaroo would be spotted hopping through the backyards of local townsmen. But what makes this story interesting is the circus claimed to have not owned any kangaroos. Then in 1900, a kangaroo was spotted in a cornfield in Mays Landing, New Jersey. Upon a search, the creature was gone, until the next day multiple sightings were reported to the local police, who could never find the creature. By 1934, in South Pittsburgh, Tennessee, a quote, kangaroo-like beast, end quote, was reported by several witnesses over a 5-day period. It was said to have killed and partially devoured several animals, including ducks, geese, a German shepherd, as well as other dogs. Of course, that does not really sound like a kangaroo, as they are typically not aggressive, as well as being vegetarian. A search party did attempt to follow the tracks, which led to a cave where they stopped. The animal was never found. The sighting stopped until 40 years later, in early to mid-November 1974, when several sightings would occur all over Chicago. A police spokesman would even confirm that the Chicago PD had tried to capture a kangaroo, and stated that the reports by citizens were not exaggerated. By November 17th, it would be spotted in and around Carmel, Indiana. It was believed to be the same one that was in Chicago. Just 4 years later in Menominee, Wisconsin, 2 men photographed what they believed was a kangaroo sitting on the side of the highway. It would later be stated that the animal was most likely a wallaby. It would be another 30 years for the animal would be spotted again, this time in Oklahoma by hunters in a field. They would post a video to YouTube, which prompted speculation that it had been a pet kangaroo that had went missing in the state a year prior. Finally, in North Salem, New York of that same year, a kangaroo was captured on video by a passing motorist and published to the Richfield Press website. Over the years, the area that the creature has been spotted in stretches from Colorado to Virginia, to Toronto and New Brunswick, to Oklahoma. In the UK, specifically Derbyshire, sightings have been attributed to wallabies escaping a private zoo in the 1980s. The harsh winter of 1962 and 1963 killed most of them off, leaving only 6 surviving. The population did recover to around 50 to 60 wallabies in the 1970s, but by 2002, there had not been a sighting recorded in years, leading many to believe the population finally died out. That was until 2007 when they started being spotted again, with sightings being recorded as late as 2019. Even on continental Europe, wallabies have found refuge in France after another zoo escape. Hikers are even known to stop by and feed the animals. To be honest, I don't know why this one is listed as a mystery. It's been confirmed that kangaroos have escaped zoos or private owners to live in the wild for years, and there's video and photographs to prove it. Pink Morning Cartoon. On April 16th, 2007, YouTuber Jinkum Chick uploaded a strange low-quality VHS clip of an unidentified cartoon. The animation is about a grandmother and her 2 grandchildren trying on hats in an old hat room. The clip generated a lot of interest from the lost media community, as no one was familiar with the show. Jinkum revealed that he got the clips from a VHS after a friend sent him a mixtape. It was also noted that the cartoon was unintentionally creepy because of the poor artwork. 2 years later, in 2009, it was re-uploaded, this time with better quality. Later on that day, Jinkum Chick uploaded another clip called, quote, "Everything's coming up spring," end quote. This video was a song about spring and animals, and it seemed to implicate that the Pink Morning cartoon wasn't story-driven, but more of a variety show. Users in both the video's comment section along with the Lost Media forum would try to find the origin of the clips. They eventually concluded the show was most likely produced by a woman who owned station WGCT/WINJ. The woman's name was Ella Flowers, and she produced the show with her daughters. Ella also did every voice on the show. Eventually, they would make contact with one of Ella's daughters, who confirmed in a series of emails that Ella was indeed the producer of the clips that had been uploaded, and that the name of the show was TV 8 Kids Fun Festival, or Kids Fun Festival for short. It came on weekday mornings between 4:30 to 5 a.m. She also claimed that many episodes were produced but disappeared after Ella passed away in 2017, and it was believed they were stolen and destroyed by a cousin. As a result, the show is considered completely lost other than a few clips. But Ella's granddaughter did a Q&A with a Discord group and revealed that the show was fairly popular in Columbus at the time, and that there are probably some recordings out there floating around on VHS. The lost media community is currently searching for them. POW MIA. This is another one that I'm not really sure why it's on here. Prisoners of war and missing in action is not really a mystery. It's a sad side effect of war. Unless maybe the author listed as a general mystery in fact that so many people are still missing from wars. That would be too much to cover. Regardless, I will move on to the next one. Putney Bridge Jogger. In May 2017, a 33-year-old woman was walking across Putney Bridge in London, England, when a bizarre incident would occur. A male jogger who was running past her would randomly shove the woman down into the highway. The woman was narrowly missed by a bus, thanks to an alert driver who turned out of the way at the last second, and it was all captured on CCTV. What makes the case even crazier is the woman did not even know him. It was completely random. It wouldn't be until 3 months later in August that the CCTV footage would be released to the public and police would start an investigation. The suspect was identified as a white man in his 30s with brown eyes and short brown hair. The police would look at more than 50 suspects and would end up arresting 3 different men, all of who were released without charge. The jogger would actually return to the bridge 15 minutes later and cross in the other direction. It was then that the woman tried to confront him and, quote, "He did not acknowledge her," end quote, detectives said. Police would eventually close the investigation as they exhausted every lead, but online sleuths still pursue the man. A few theories have came up since. Some speculate that it was a businessman whose room was nearby, allowing him to quickly get changed and catch a flight back out before he could get caught. Some also suspected a diplomat who had immunity from prosecution. One of the more bizarre theories suggested that it was an assassin possibly hired by a former love interest of the woman. Regardless, the man has never been identified. That is all for part 2 of Layer 1. If you made it this far, thanks for listening. I appreciate the support.